Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is October 30th. We're nearing the end of the year. We're certainly in the fourth quarter, and a lot's going on. A lot went on last week. A lot has gone on this week. I'm going to try to move quickly through this call because I could be here for hours if I wanted to get into excruciating detail about the economic underpinnings of the transition going on with their currency, the revaluation of their currency, and all of that. So I'm going to try to hit the high points today, but the news is good. We're moving in the right direction, and everyone that's been involved in the dinar, whether it's been for a year or 10 years or longer, should be very excited about the progress. Everything that I'm going to discuss and what I've been discussing for months is all under the rubric, in my opinion, of Prime Minister Soudani's promise when he promised by Allah that the citizens of Iraq would see a new exchange rate this year. I would include January of 2025 to be this year because, in my mind, the backstop is January. I mean, if you crunch the numbers and do the math, the things that they're doing cannot be done without them having their own currency. They just simply do not have the USD to back the things that they are doing, and I don't think these other countries would be involving themselves in agreements with Iraq without the express understanding that Iraq would be operating with its own currency. The reason I say that is because I've been saying it for months now that, in my opinion, Iraq has been operating with an undisclosed exchange rate. The currency swaps that they've done with other countries make no sense if the dinar remains in a program rate. The international contracts to rebuild their roads, electric grid, homes, schools, hospitals, sports stadiums, and, of course, the Baghdad airport make no sense if the dinar remains in a program rate. So we're in the final stages of the transition from what I'll call a hybrid currency to a basic currency economy, meaning that they were operating with the USD, then they limited and eliminated the use of the USD for the private citizen, but retained it for the government. As the government completed the monetary reforms, and now the government is ready to flip the switch and go back to a base currency where they will not be using the US dollar in terms of their private transactions in country or international commitments with other nations, but will instead be utilizing for the new Iraqi dinar for all exchanges. Let's talk a little bit about why I'm very optimistic about this getting done, certainly in January, if not before January. What we've witnessed is the project to delete the zeros. Very simply, the 3-0 provisional currency was created because of the hyperinflation that existed in Iraq at the fall of Saddam Hussein. So the elimination of the zeros in and of itself would increase the value of the dinar because they've substantially reduced the money supply. But the deletion of the zeros isn't just about the money supply in country. The deletion of the zeros also includes the increase in the value of the dinar against other currencies. We also see the imminent release of the HCL, the 2025 budget tables, the release of the lower denoms, and then finally the IQD on the Forex. All this is working together, and we're at a point of no return now because they've gone down this road. They've eliminated the use of the U.S. dollar. They do not have sufficient U.S. dollar reserves to meet the government expenditures. So the only plausible solution is for them to reinstate their currency against all other currencies and to increase the value for its use in country for the exchange of goods and services for its citizens. It's really no more complicated than that. Again, I can get into the specific details about the meetings, about economic theory, about money supply, and all of that makes no sense. We don't need to discuss all of that. All the average individual denarian needs to know is when can we expect the reinstatement and revaluation of the dinar and why. And for the little summary I've given you here, I just don't see how they can go past January without risking failed nation status. The other issue with regard to Soudani's promise is that we need to understand that Iraq is a parliamentary system. And in a parliamentary system, they don't have fixed elections. The sitting government can declare there would be an election at a certain time, but there can be a no-confidence vote if the government is not fulfilling its obligations. So for the Prime Minister of Iraq to make an absolute promise to the citizens that they will see a new exchange rate for their currency before the end of the year is a promise he cannot break and expect to remain in office. Now, I do use as a caveat January. So, for example, he wouldn't necessarily be breaking his promise if Soudani went out and said, we're going to put the dinar on the Forex on January 2nd and float it and let it seek its real value. So this is where we find ourselves right now. So for those of us, again, that have dinar, whether we're a newcomer to the dinar or whether we've held dinar for 5, 10, 20 years, we're in a very, very good place, and I think this is all going to be over very soon. We've all waited a long time, and we would like our well-deserved reward, and I think it is coming. I wanted to touch on something else, because before we have our next call, of course, we will be involved in a national election in this country. And it will affect us because once we have this wealth, or even for those of us that don't have dinar and don't have this wealth, we're going to be facing two very, very different countries. This is a very odd election because we not only have two people that are diametrically opposed to just about everything, but the other thing here is that we have two back-to-back terms because, of course, Trump was president prior to the current administration, and the vice president of the current administration is now the candidate for president for the coming 4-year period. So I want to very briefly review on what we witnessed with both administrations. With Trump, we saw that he closed the southern border. He substantially increased the oil supply. He replenished the strategic oil reserve under $30 a barrel. He forced the European nations to fund NATO. He replaced NAFTA with the MCA, which was probably the single best Western treaty in our lifetime. He destroyed ISIS literally in a matter of weeks. And he established the Abraham Accords for peace in the Middle East. And lastly, when he left office, the inflation rate was 1.4%. Now, if anyone had told you that that's what Trump would have accomplished if you would elect him president, they would have left. And they'd have said, that's not possible. He can't possibly do all of that. But the fact of the matter is, he not only did all of that, he did all of that while under withering assault from the left with impeachments and all manner of slander. The other thing, by the way, that I left out was he had the embargo and sanctions on Iran, which basically bankrupted them. But the most important thing that Trump promised to do, and in my opinion, the reason that they did everything they could to what's the word I want to use, to hamper his ability to govern. And, of course, the reason they've done everything they can to try to keep him out of office this time, up to and including attempting to assassinate him, is for one very simple thing. He wants to end the Federal Reserve Bank in America. We've discussed the bank at length. I may touch on it again here. But that's really the nub of it. That's really what's going on here. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at what the Biden-Harris administration did. They opened our southern border, which flooded us with anywhere from 10 to 15 million unvetted illegals, stopped our oil production. We were not only oil neutral or dependent, we were oil dominant in the world. And that's one of the reasons why our inflation rate was so low. They spent down our strategic oil reserve, meaning we're going to have to replace it from the $26 or $27 a barrel that Trump paid for it to what, $75 a barrel, tripled the price, ended the embargo and the sanctions against Iran, created the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course triggered inflation, and as a result, we've seen a hyperinflationary rate that hasn't existed since probably the Depression. Most people don't understand how inflation really works. The inflation rate right now is about, 3.4%, and of course the Biden-Harris administration is taking bows over that because they're saying the inflation rate is dropping. Of course, what they don't tell you is that that's more than twice the inflation rate they inherited. In addition, inflation is cumulative, so the 3.5% you're paying today is on top of the 7% from the year before and the 9% high from the year before that. So it's cumulative. This means that the basic necessities of life, food, shelter, and clothing, are up more than 20% in just 4 years. That's an absolute abysmal performance. So we have an election here where Donald Trump's running on his record, and because the Biden-Harris administration can't run on their record, they're running on basically, orange man bad. It's unfortunate that this race is even close because any astute person with an IQ over room temperature that simply looks at the comparison between each 4-year term can only come to one conclusion, that Donald Trump is much better for the American citizen than Biden and Harris. Of course, the other issue, which from my standpoint is particularly annoying, is their constant refrain that they're trying to save our democracy. Well, first of all, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional representative republic. So what they're really saying is they're trying to create a one-party social democracy, and they're trying to eliminate, to the extent that they can, that we're a constitutional representative republic. What do I mean by that? Well, we have to go back to Obama's fundamental transformation. At least Obama was honest about it. He wanted to fundamentally transform this country. Why would you want to fundamentally transform anything that you purported to love? Well, you wouldn't. So what is it that they want to do to save our democracy? Well, since that's their primary goal, they have to eliminate their competition that, of course, wants to do just the reverse. So we have to have election interference. We have to have impeachments. We have to have indictments. We have to have slander. We have to trigger nut jobs to take shots at people. But politically, what they mean by this is things like they want to stack the Supreme Court, which alters, of course, the balance of power between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. They want to end the Senate filibuster, which is the protection for the minority in this country. They want to stack the House with representatives by bringing in illegals to change the census. They want to amend or repeal our First Amendment right to free speech, which they call misinformation when they don't agree with it. They want to end the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms with their mandatory government gun buyback. They basically want to destroy the Fourth Amendment, right to privacy, and one of the ways they want to do that is with the creation of the central bank digital currency, which monitors all of our purchases. They seem to have a problem with our Fifth Amendment right to due process since they've denied it to a sitting president and a presidential candidate. And, of course, they want to centralize everything and eliminate the 10th Amendment or states' rights, the decentralization of government federalism. A best example of that would be the elimination of the abortion on demand in this country. In the Dobbs case, all the Dobbs case said, there is no fundamental unalienable right in the Constitution to have an abortion at any time and for any reason. Therefore, it falls to the states and the people. Well, this offends the left because they've spent the last 100 years trying to ignore and avoid the Bill of Rights and centralize everything. And, of course, Dobbs isn't just about abortion. Dobbs is about the reaffirmation of the decentralization of the federal government and federalism, states' rights. So they have a problem with the citizens of each state making a determination themselves about abortion because it's not a constitutional issue. So their real argument at the end of the day is they don't like the Bill of Rights. And I'll go back to Obama. Obama said that the Bill of Rights is a series of negative rights because they limit the federal government. Well, that's precisely the point. But for a Marxist grifter, that's a problem. So this is where we find ourselves. Now, what does that have to do with the dinar? Well, when this currency revalues, a lot of Americans, as many as 15 million, are going to be overnight millionaires. And what do millionaires want? I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want larger government, and they don't want higher taxes. And what's the Biden-Harris administration want to do? They want to raise the marginal tax bracket to 70%. They want to raise long-term cap gain to 25%. They want to raise short-term cap gain to 44%. And they want to tax unrealized capital gains, which means when you have tangible assets with increases in the intrinsic value, they're not liquid assets, homes, boats, etc., property, real estate, they want you to pay a tax on that increase. Well, unfortunately, most people would be forced to sell an asset in order to pay a tax. Well, what happens when you have a forced sale? You get pennies on a dollar. So if you are, for example, a farmer, you could end up selling a farm for less than it's actually worth in order to pay a tax that shouldn't be due. This is the nonsense that we're going to have to be dealing with. Now, there is a solution, at least one solution, one way to mitigate against all of this, whether you have currencies or not. And that's the establishment of your family asset protection trust package. We've marketed it for over a decade to denarians for the reasons that we've stated each and every week over that period of time. But the political and economic environment in this country is such that every citizen of this country should avail themselves of the protection of a family asset protection trust package. I want to briefly just summarize what those benefits would be. First, by establishing this package, you're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. Why is that? Because when you establish such a trust package, your assets, your net worth are sealed. The general public has no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings, which is actually the way it should be. It's frankly none of their business. This trust package will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. Why? Because the business transactions are occurring within the trust, not you personally. You merely are the beneficiary of what's within the trust. But another important reason, the IRS likes low-hanging fruit. They're not particularly interested in going after individuals with sophisticated trust packages on the theory that you also have sophisticated, knowledgeable legal representation. And like I said, they like the low-hanging fruit. They like to hit and move on. So when the IRS sees that you have such a package, they move on for the most part. Now, this package works very well for gifting. If you happen to have currencies, you can gift currencies to individuals pre-RV to avoid the federal gift tax. But If you gift them through the special gift trust within our trust, and this is a unique package, a unique sub-trust within our package, and the reason I know that's because I'm the author of that package. By gifting to the gift sub-trust within our package, you will not only avoid the federal gift tax, but you will also have complete control of the post-RV proceeds. This trust will also allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. Avoiding probate means that no one will know the size of your estate, no one will know who your heirs are, no one will know how much they each stand to inherit. They will be entitled to that inheritance immediately because there is no probate. And the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of your estate in excess of $12 million, is null and void, meaning that your heirs will not only receive in private their proportionate share of your estate immediately, but they will receive 100 cents on a dollar. That can only be done through this trust, period, full stop. Lastly, there are certain asset protection benefits in this trust, which exist only within this trust. They're not available through LLCs. They're not available through sub-S corporations or limited family partnerships or any of the like. It's only available through a trust package such as this. For example, this trust will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Let's say that you have 10 million dinar. You establish our trust, and you assign those currencies to the trust. Let's say they subsequently revalue conservatively for $1. So now your 10 million dinar are worth $10 million. You now have 10 million in trust. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. Why? Because under the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the currencies were only worth $10,000 when you transferred them out of title to the trust. That's all you can be sued for. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. So as you purchase items, homes, cars, boats, etc., you place each of those items in their own separate sub-trust within the package. Well, how does this protect you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth? I'll give you an example. One of the items you purchase is a car. You place that car in one of the sub-trusts. What's in that sub-trust? Merely that car and the car insurance policy. So one day you're driving your car, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim understandably wants to sue you, but you don't own anything. So they're left to sue the owner of the car. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And once again, what's in that sub-trust? Merely that car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the plaintiffs and the insurance company will negotiate a settlement. You will not be involved in those negotiations. The car insurance company will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are in other separate sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons not involved in the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs would have no standing. So your trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your family asset protection trust package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and some other currencies. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies, pre-RV, and then financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one optional gift sub-trust in the event that you want to give currencies to friends and family and control the post-RV proceeds, and then 8 additional standard sub-trusts who hold homes, cars, boats, etc., we can always add standard sub-trusts as necessary. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to market the trust package to Denarians, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package and doing all of the funding post-RV, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving an additional $500. We even have a deferred payment arrangement for those that can't even afford that. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would offset our out-of-pocket cost. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues, any balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with a deferred payment arrangement, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their trust in force and their affairs in order pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. So that's basically what I wanted to discuss for today. It's not only about the dinar. It's not only about the progress going on in Iraq. It's not only about a trust package, but it's also about the economic environment that we're in right now. Because a week from now, we're going to decide who runs this country for the next 4 years. And as I said before, the difference couldn't be more stark. Throw all personalities out of this. I don't care whether you love or hate Trump. I don't care whether you love or hate Biden or Harris. It's irrelevant. You have a unique opportunity here because you've seen them side by side for 4 years. In my personal opinion, it's an absolute no-brainer. The only way anyone could vote for Biden and Harris is if they literally hate Trump or they literally hate this country. Because the facts are the facts. One ran the country and was running like a top, and the other side blew everything up. And now they pretend to be the person to fix what they've broken. So everyone should vote. Everyone should vote their conscience, but everyone should vote logically and on policy, not on personalities. And that's all I have to say about that in the words of Forrest Gump. I guess we'll go to a Q&A here. Let me go ahead and get us into the Q&A. Before I begin the Q&A, I want to give you our contact information. If the things we've discussed are important to you, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust, but you're under no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about trust, about the currencies. You can review the package, contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help you. You can contact us and request our initial package either by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited, LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited, LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. Request a package. You certainly should get it within a matter of days. Review the package. Contact us if you have any questions and if you wish to proceed. Everything you need is right there. Well, we do have some folks in the queue here. Let's see. Our first caller here is area code 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Larry from Maryland. With the idea of whether we're looking at a short or long-term capital gain, does it matter when we purchase the dinars, or is it the actual act of revaluation, or is there anyone, or is it just an arbitrary determination by the IRS?
Okay. Assume if we are under the assumption that the gain on the exchange is a cap gain, then it would be based on how long you've held the actual currency. However, I'm of the opinion they're going to call it ordinary income. Now, if they do, we have a letter where you're going to have to pay the tax if they call it ordinary income, but we have a letter stating that we believe they ought to amend that based on certain articles, sections of the code, which along with the IRS publication 525, which referred to it as cap gain. Now the Section 525, of course, is probably going to have little or no bearing, but hopefully the IRS is going to look at the sections of the code, 98082, 640, I think it's 643A and B, and of course publication 525, and they might agree. I'll be honest with you, if Trump's president, we might be in better shape on that. If Harris administration, or if Harris is the president, it's ordinary income. I mean, the left are kleptocratic in their approach to things, so that's where it is. I'm not saying that if Trump's the president, it's not going to be ordinary income, but I'm saying if Harris is president, it's absolutely going to be ordinary income. Remember, these are the people who want 87,000 more agents to audit us. Well, they're not auditing us for long-term cap gain. So,
and then if it is considered capital gain, what's the time frame, and then how are we documenting when we have what documentation?
Your purchase receipts.
Okay.
Your purchase receipts.
Okay.
I think all the currency that I purchased is well beyond 1 year. So if it is cap gain, I'm in good shape. But of course, if it's not, it doesn't matter whether I've had it for 20 years or 20 days. No. Ordinary income is ordinary income. The other issue is this: even if they call it cap gain, let's say hypothetically the Harris administration is elected, and they agree that it's cap gain. But what happens if they change the law and say, yeah, but it's still taxed at a substantially higher rate as a cap gain? So, we're just going to have to play that way. But by all means, whatever the taxes, pay it, because the penalty is 100% plus interest, and if it's ordinary income and you don't pay the tax in a timely fashion, it's gone. It's all gone. So pay your taxes.
Okay.
Whatever they are.
Thank you.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 619. That's 619. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Jim. It's Ed. I have a question with what you had the conversation with. If we transfer the currency directly to the trust, how can it be considered ordinary income if that's to an individual?
Because the IRS says so. A gain is a gain, whether it's in trust or not.
Sure. Okay, so it has no impact whether it's an individual or a trust.
The transfer to the trust limits someone who wants to sue you and allows the asset to become basically private within the trust. You're the beneficiary. It's in the trust, and then whatever you subsequently do with that is private, unless you're either being sued or you're being audited. Okay. But even if you're being sued, the plaintiff would have to show cause in order to pierce the trust. But irrespective of the asset protection implications, a gain is a gain where the IRS is concerned. Whether it's individually held, whether it's in a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust, if you turn $1 into $2, a tax is due.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. You may or may not know it. Let's say I'm single right now, and then after the RV, we go and I get married. Now I want her to have her own separate trust. So that transfer from my trust and a portion amount into her trust, is that considered taxable to her?
I don't think it should be. Now, if the RV happens prior to your being married, that's a premarital asset. So theoretically, you're protected if the marriage goes south. But once you get married, the question then becomes, can you transfer a premarital asset to a spouse tax deductibly? I don't know. A marital asset, let's say the RV happened after you got married. Well, you certainly could transfer, and it wouldn't be a taxable issue. But if it's a premarital, that's actually a good question. I'd have to check that out. The lawyer might say, well, it's a premarital asset, it's a taxable transfer. Or once you transfer it to her, now it is a marital asset, so you can't get it back. You've given it to her. That's it. So I guess I would have to fall on it's a taxable transfer if it was a premarital asset.
Okay.
Or you can or else if you ever did get sued and say, well, he transferred it to me and it was non-taxable, therefore he was declaring it to be a marital asset. Divorce always makes things sticky, but I honestly don't know. As a matter of fact, I'm going to write that down because I'm going to find that out. Transfer a premarital asset.
Let me ask you this last question. You already know the answer because I asked you the other day, but for the benefit of others, once the RV happens, we have our trust. What would be the best way if we want to also open up a business to then put the business inside the trust or do a completely separate trust? How do you best recommend that so that we can then draw income?
Right. You do not want to pollute a personal asset protection trust with business interests. You want to create separate entities for those. There are also liability issues that you don't want to commingle. So I have 10 million dinar. I go to the bank. I exchange the currency for $3. That's $30 million. $30 million goes into my asset protection trust. I now want to set up some sort of a brick or mortar business, and I need $5 million to do that. I'll establish a business entity. I'll transfer $5 million from my personal asset protection trust to that business trust. It's a wholly separate entity having nothing to do with my personal asset protection trust, and that business will operate independently of my personal asset protection trust.
Okay. All right. How do you get the best protection on that business trust? What would you recommend there?
Well, depending upon what it is, you have LLC, sub-S corporations, limited family partnerships. Now, they're not going to provide the same protection as your personal asset protection trust because there are inherent liabilities in business that you're not going to have as the person just, living your life, going to the grocery store, taking a couple vacations a year, playing golf twice a week. I mean, that's different activity than if you have a business where people are coming in and out, or if you're selling a particular product that theoretically could damage a person if something went wrong. So, it's a little bit different, but that's why you want to isolate it and separate it from your personal assets. So to the extent there's any civil liability, it'll be limited to the business and won't spill over into your personal assets.
Thanks, Jim. You're awesome. I appreciate you, buddy. Have a great week.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Take care, Eddie. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 509. That's 509. Go ahead.
Good afternoon to you, Jim. This is Art over in Left Coast.
Yes, sir. Art, how are you doing?
Doing good. It's amazing. As long as I've been listening to you and have had our trusts and I always have an opportunity to learn something new. It's amazing. It's like continual learning education or legal education. But when I was, I bought most the amount of the currencies when we were boots on the ground in Iraq, and going to the Bank of El Rashid, they did not provide receipts. So what I have done is I have the orders that put us on the ground. I have, of course, the tangible assets, the currency, and then I wrote a letter stating that I was there and this is how much I had acquired while I was there, did not have receipts. However, it was X amount of dollars, this sort of thing. I don't believe would that need to be notarized? And if it does, how would I go back and backdate a notarization of a letter that I wrote years ago?
Well, it's odd that you're asking this question because my nephew/godson has done 2 tours in Iraq, and he's coming home next week, and he has a substantial amount of currency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call him and ask him what he's pretty good with stuff. I'm going to call him and ask what he's done, and then I'll get back to you and tell you what he said.
Okay, good. Because like I say, I've got I even went to the extent of having one of the other guys that I was, boots on the ground with, wrote a letter stating that, he was there at the time, and we went to the Bank of El Rashid, and, that sort of thing. But I'd be very appreciative if you would let me know how that turns out, how he is able to accommodate that.
I will. Well, he's still in Iraq. He will be back next week. I can call him, but about half of the time I call, I don't get through. It's not like he doesn't pick up. It literally doesn't get through. But if I can get through, I'll basically ask him what he's doing, and I'll just relate that to you.
Well, I would imagine that I'm guessing that at this juncture with Iraq, that if he's purchased any currencies, any Iraqi dinar, that he's actually getting a receipt at the time. Like I say, back then in 2004, he didn't provide receipts. So that would be my guess.
You know what you could do is you could prepare an affidavit under penalty of perjury explaining everything you've explained to me, and then have it signed and notarized. And then when you go to the bank to do your exchange, the bank's sitting there saying, well, I'm going to make X amount of dollars by pushing a few buttons to do this exchange, and then I'm going to have the float of this money in my bank. We may not have a receipt, but we have an affidavit from this person. Am I really going to let him walk out of here and do the exchange across the street, or am I going to go ahead and do the exchange? So that's what I would – I prepare a detailed affidavit and get it notarized.
Okay, doke. I'll do that. Thank you very kindly, sir. I appreciate it. You have a great day. And, you have a fantastic way of encapsulating the situation that we have now politically. I enjoy listening to not only to your comments about the trust itself, but that when you have an opportunity to spend when it's about the political ramifications, I say you've got that down to a T, and it's very, very well said.
Well, I appreciate.
Thank you.
I'm from the D.C. area, and I know the Potomac 2 steps. So,
yeah,
I know.
That certainly helps. So anyway, I'll get out of your hair. Thank you very kindly, sir. Blessings to you, and bye for now.
Okay, take care. Bye now. Okay, our next caller, let's see, who haven't I spoken with, is area code 443. That's 443. Go ahead.
Hi,
Hello?
Jim. This is Gina from Maryland.
Hey, Gina, how are you?
I'm all right. So after that gentleman spoke, now I have 2 things I wanted to say or ask.
Okay.
Is it possible that you could come back to all of us with information about the circumstance of purchasing or, exchanging while someone was in Iraq and they returned home with it? So that all of us, because there may be more of us than just that person who's in that circumstance.
Right.
I will tell you.
I'm going to write your name. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Or do you want to get back to us individually, or would you like to come back to in the next call and bring it up?
I'm going to try to do both. I'm going to try to get a hold of my nephew/godson and see what because I know he has a lot of currencies. As a matter of fact, I can tell you this: he works. Right now, he's working security for some of the officials there, and he has our trust, and he convinced some of them to establish our trust. So, I'm going to find out from them exactly. And, maybe I might even give them a heads up. It may not even occur to them to bring back proof of purchase. So he may say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go back to the bank and get whatever. And so I'll just find out what's going on, and I'll get back to you and Art with the information I can get from him as soon as I can get it.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I have asked you this question before, and what we did do, we do have a receipt in air quotes. It does show like a U.S. dollar amount in exchange for, but I could see where someone would question it. They didn't even spell my husband's name. They didn't even spell his name correctly on one of them. They spelled his name with a V on one and with a PH on another one. So, it's possible.
That's not something I would ever bring up when you're sitting there to do the exchange. If they bring up, it's just a typo. But I would also suggest you as well, create an affidavit explaining in detail what you did, when you purchased it, how much, and again, make sure it's notarized. An affidavit is a statement made under penalty of perjury. I'm not saying the bank's going to, use that, but I'm saying it's a strong indicator to them. I mean, the question they ask you, are these clean, clear funds of non-criminal origin legally purchased? And if you have an affidavit, I mean, they can call you a liar if they want, but like I said, they want to do business with you. You just got to give them a reason to believe that they don't have a problem.
Yeah, when I asked you about this previously, you suggested the same thing, and we did. We drafted up, wrote up a statement that indicated, he was there, he wasn't with the military, he was with a contractor at the time, and we, just kind of laid out his time frame that he was there, and that he acquired, the dinar currency when he was there and had it notarized. And I think in our case, like I think fortunately for us, like I kept one final pay stub from him being employed by that contractor.
Well, that's just more incidental
evidence
information. Yeah. So I take all that with me, and you may want to make a few calls and tell the bank what you've got, because you may call 4 banks and three of the banks are iffy, and one of them said, we shouldn't have a problem with that. Then even if the rate might be slightly less, you want to go where you can just do your exchange. You don't want to be, screwing around. Wait, they say, well, we got to go upstairs to the big dogs, and then 2 weeks later you're still waiting for an answer. So.
Right. No.
So
okay.
You just got a little bit more to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. We did the same thing, and Art is not the only one who thinks about this, and you're like, when this comes finally, hopefully to fruition, could it be like, oh no, this just isn't enough.
Yeah, you'd hate that.
But you're sitting there with but you have the currency. I mean, you're holding the currency. It's all kind of raggedy looking. It's not like it looks like it's freshly printed stuff. I mean, it's old.
Like I'm saying, they want the business. You just have to give them a reason. And the affidavit, if it turns out that you're not telling the truth, not only will they confiscate the currency, you got to or confiscate the account for the exchange. You have it. Now, what they could do is they could negotiate the exchange in a frozen account while they theoretically investigate. But if what you're saying is legit, it'll pan out. Not that they'd be able to prove that it's legit. They wouldn't be able to disprove it. So, that's the best advice I can give you. Just go in there and maybe even take an attorney with you. Like I said, they want to do business. They're looking for every reason to do the business. So you should be okay.
Right. So, okay. Totally different topic question. The BRICS nations and the meeting they had last week, and what's going on with that. What are your? I know what the concept is. I know what's going on, and at this point, the U.S. is not involved. They don't want the U.S. dollar. But what's your I don't know, speculation or maybe inside info or anything that you know about how that impacts us? Because it's not going away.
My opinion of all of this is, of course, the BRICS nations were created so that they can have reserve currencies other than the U.S. dollar. What they're going after is the hegemony of the U.S. dollar as the world's singular, or certainly at least primary, reserve currency. But the reason they've got the ability to do that is because we shot ourselves in the foot. Back in the 70s, we went off the gold standard and we implemented Keynesian economic philosophy. It's debt-oriented. And in order to do that, you print money. So we printed lots of money. The value of the dollar, of course, has been diluted. Then what came along about 10 years later was the Basel system, where the world was transitioning from fiat-based currencies, which are currencies based on the full faith and credit of the respective governments, in which case the United States was the sole superpower. Now we transition to Basel, where the value of our currencies are based on the known natural resources, our ability to bring them to market, and our money supply. Well, we just stopped producing oil and started printing money. The dollar plummeted in value against other currencies. The BRICS nations saw an opportunity, and they took it. We did it to ourselves. We have no one to blame but ourselves. And Kamala Harris is just going to continue the bleeding because she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She's a moron. That's just my opinion. It's not the opinion of Trusts Unlimited. But I have degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've been contributing member to 2 presidential commissions. And the woman is a walking, talking moron. And she scares me to death. Absolutely. That's why I say don't vote personalities, vote policies, because the two couldn't be more disparate in their thinking and their intellect. That's my,
right.
That's my view of it.
Well, I know every country, I mean, their currency is backing, the concept is, the idea is that you're backing your currency with a commodity. So whatever each country has, some countries have oil, some have diamonds, some have rare earth minerals, petroleum, whatever. So that's, and then I think they're going to go gold. They're going to go gold backed also. So, is it basically the United States at some point is going to have to do something with its currency? It's going to have to be backed by something other than debt. We cannot continue this way.
Well, let me. I know we can't. Let me tell you what I think. I kept bringing up the election because it's a week from now, and I'm talking about Trump and Harris. And it's no secret what my opinion is. And incidentally, Trump says things all the time. My wife comes in the room and says, "Why are you screaming, Jim?" I said, "I'm screaming at Trump because he just said something." I said, "Why would you say that?" So I understand the personality issue there, but economically, he's right on the money about everything. He's recently keeps talking about a golden age. What's he referring to? Mm-hmm. He's referring to the elimination of the Federal Reserve and going back to sound money. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, a people's currency issued, used to exchange for goods and services with no interest attached. That's right. Where he wants to go. How could he accomplish that? In my opinion, that's why they shot him.
Yep.
They've shot or attempted to kill every president that threatened to or actually attempted to end the Federal Reserve. Because this is our third Federal Reserve system. That's what they've done.
Yeah.
What I think Trump wants to do if he gets back in there is audit the Federal Reserve, show that they are a corrupt organization, eliminate the Federal Reserve, go back to a U.S. dollar, which we haven't had since 1913, an interest-free dollar. That's where I think he's going with this, and that's why they're throwing everything at him, and that ends their laundering system. That ends the entire left's money operating system. And that, frankly, one of their major hubs for all of that was Ukraine, and that's why Trump made a phone call to Ukraine. 2 weeks later, they impeach him. It's money, period. It's money.
It's greed. It's greed and power, addiction, and everything. Okay. Well, I'll say one last thing, and I'll let you move on. just for giggles, if anybody, there is something on YouTube where Janet Yellen was recently, just like in the past 2 days, she was at some presentation or whatever, and she was asked a question about the tariffs that, Trump, and going that route and blah, blah, blah. And she's standing there receiving the question, and the Federal Reserve symbol that's sitting like on the front of the podium where she's standing behind to answer the question, the Federal Reserve seal, like the symbol, falls off the podium.
Yeah, that was a poltergeist.
Really funny.
I saw that. I applauded that. Talk about the timing.
Yep.
There are certain issues about tariffs. Now, prior to 1913, we funded the federal government with tariffs. And from maybe our golden years really were from about 1880 to about 1915, because we were running surpluses, funding the federal government with tariffs, and then we transitioned over to we created the income tax and and the rest is history. It's the progressive movement, it's the Keynesian philosophy, it's all of that, and that's what Trump wants to reverse. Yellen is another one that I don't even know if she could tie her own shoes. These people, these are the people, the wizards of smart that don't know how an umbrella works, and they get soaking wet in the rain. These people have no common sense. It's really, it's like when you're in a room of geniuses, and they're all quirky, kind of weird. For some reason, they have a certain skill set that limits all of their other normal functions. She's a perfect example of it. Her reign has been absolutely abysmal for the American citizen, economically, philosophically. The word economy is a Greek word. It basically means household budget. That's what the word economy means. They've destroyed the economy. The average person can't pay for food, shelter, and clothing. They can't keep up. So they use their credit cards, or they get a second job, or they borrow more money. They're killing us. They're killing us. Yeah. And Trump's the only one that can stop it. He's the only one that's got the guts to try.
Well, right.
How many people? Go ahead.
And he's not in any. Nobody's in his pocket.
No. And the thing, and of everyone that's running, he's the one that needs this headache less. Right. He'd take his beautiful wife and his beautiful family and get on their beautiful yacht and go to the south of France, and instead he's dodging bullets from these morons. It's pathetic.
I know. All right. Well, I'll let you move on to your next person. Thank you so much. I always enjoy the conversation, and as the other gentleman said, I get something every time I listen, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I greatly appreciate it. You take care, Gene.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 615. That's 615. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Just two quick questions. One, as I recall, sometime back you mentioned that Chase Bank was one of the banks that was involved in this whole process from working with the central bank over there. Is that a bank that you would put in as a candidate to do the exchange?
Well, it's actually Chase J.P. Morgan, which is Diamond, and I would deal with them.
Okay,
that's
good.
That's certainly one of the banks I'm going to call to talk about reductions in transaction fees if our clients go to them. I've said on our calls, I know a lot of people are going to run to the bank with their hair on fire to do their exchange, but I'll probably need a week to call banks and get a response from them or prove who we are or something. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, I probably should start making those calls now. I'm going to write that down, bank calls.
Good.
I'm going to start calling them. I might as well tell them who we are, what we got. They may hang up on me. They may say, hey, come on down. We'll see.
Well, banks love profits.
Yeah. And they don't they don't like us. We're just a means to an end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, I thought since they were involved in the process, they might be a little bit easier to work with and more understanding of the process and what we're trying to achieve. Second question is, once it hits the exchange, what? And I'm not quoting you here. I'm just curious. What do you think the timing and the valuation will be as it floats up? A, and B, where do you think the dust will settle when it comes back down to a spot?
Well, okay, there's a couple of numbers. One number is $1. I always say, well, let's just be really, really, really conservative and just assume $1, but I don't believe that. The next number would be 322. That was the value of the dinar when it went into the program rate 20 years ago. The next number is north of $4, which a lot of people really think is going to happen. The next number is $4.85, which some very knowledgeable currency arbitrage specialists have told me they see it at. Now, when the Kuwaiti dinar revalued and it settled back at about 346 or thereabouts, it went up over $7 because of velocity. It's an artificial increase in value based on velocity. That certainly is going to happen with the dinar. So, I think Shabibi said he thought the dinar could go as high as $16. If it went to $16, I wouldn't be that shocked. Here's the problem. It goes up, people start buying it at $4, $5, $6, thinking they're going to exchange it at $8, $9, or $10, and the next day it's down to $2.86, and they lost everything. So I'm thinking conservatively, north of $4. If it came out at $3.22 today, I wouldn't rush to the bank to exchange it. I'd watch it every day, and I'd wait a little bit. As soon as I hit $4, I would probably go in and exchange some of it. The other issue is the timing, because if it happens late in the quarter, taxes are due on the 15th day of the first month of the next quarter. If it happens early enough in the quarter, I have time to, play with it a little bit. So timing's an issue too. We're just going to have to wait till it happens and act accordingly.
So you think that your thinking might be that where the dust will settle when it goes up and comes back down, it's going to be something just north of $4?
I think it'll be north of $4. I think the Kuwaiti dinar is about 346, I believe, somewhere in there. Well, the wealth of Kuwait is dwarfed by Iraq. So the idea that the Iraqi dinar would be worth $1 more than the Kuwaiti dinar just makes common sense to me. That's the whole point of Basel compliance, is the values based on the underlying. I've argued it. Per square mile, in my opinion, Iraq's the richest country in the world per square mile. So why wouldn't their currency, a Basel IV compliant currency, reflect that value?
The last part of this is, what do you think that the timing would be as it floats up and then comes back down to the settling point where you want to make a realistic exchange?
I think it's going to take
off. What happened in Kuwait?
Well, Kuwait was a little different situation. Kuwait happened over a period of, less than 2 years. We're talking 20 years now. And the Kuwaiti dinar, I purchased Kuwaiti dinar between 10 and 15 cents. So I purchased the Iraqi dinar for 1/1000th of $1. So the leverage with Iraq is so much greater that the velocity should be quicker and the fluctuation should be quicker, so it could go up faster and drop down quicker. And of course, once then when all of the speculators get involved, they're making money both directions. So, and they're killing the average person that just purchased some dinar and they just want to exchange it and make some money. So, it's going to be intense. My only advice to people is don't get greedy. Go to the bank, do your exchange, pay your taxes, invest conservatively, and thank Jesus, because it's never going to happen again. Not because a couple of things. We've got the richest country in the world per square mile going into a program rate. At the same time, the global transition is going from fiat to commodity-backed currencies through Basel. So when you compare, when you put that all together, it's just never going to happen again. I just don't see how it's possible.
I absolutely agree, and I endorse your don't get greedy.
Yeah, you already made a fool.
100% or better. 100% of something's better than nothing.
Yeah, and you're doing better than 100% because if 10 million dinar you purchase for $10,000, if it comes back at $1, that's $10 million. If you told someone I made $10 million on a $10,000 investment, they'd call you a liar or a fool.
Don't tell them.
But it is what it is. Well, if you tell them, I have friends and family that just don't get it, and that's fine. Yeah. I'm going to go to the bank. I'm going to do my exchange. I'm going to go buy a 1964 Aston Martin. I'm going to park it in front of their house and rev the engine. And when they look out the window, I'm just going to wave and drive off.
I think that's a good game plan.
Yeah, and it is what it is, and that'll cut them a nice check.
There you go, and they'll get over everything. They'll forget everything they ever said.
No. The saddest people in the world are going to be the people that were told to purchase it, explained, and beyond that were explained why it's a good investment, and they blew it off. They're going to be very, very unhappy people, but, it's all you can do,
Yep.
All right.
Well, this whole process has been a testimony to patience.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm getting old. I need this money now. I got things to do.
you and me both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Have a good week.
All right. You too. Bye-bye now. Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, thanks for taking the time to listen to this call. Our next call will be scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call, but failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.